Nobody tells you that the people who share your blood can be the ones who bleed you dry. I didn't learn that in a single dramatic moment. It came in pieces. Small, quiet pieces. I kept finding reasons to ignore. Because I was 71 years old, I had built something from nothing, and I still wanted to believe the words son and daughter meant something more than a line on a bank statement. My name is Thaddeus Washington Coleman. Down on the shipping yards off Fulton Industrial Boulevard in Atlanta, they just call me Thad. 40 years ago, I bought a rusted 1984 Kenworth W900 with a busted transmission and $1,100 I'd saved driving other men's trucks. Today, Coleman Logistics runs a fleet of 512 vehicles out of 3 states and clears a quarterly revenue north of $40 million. I built it for her, my wife Viola. And after she was gone, I kept building it for them. My son Julian, my daughter Naya. I thought I was leaving them a legacy. What I was really doing was feeding their stomachs while I starved their character. Last Tuesday, the bill for that mistake came due. It didn't start with a conversation. It started with an invasion. I was in my office on the 45th floor of the Coleman Tower, reviewing the Q3 fuel reports when the door slammed open. Not a knock, an invasion. My son Julian walked in first. 40 years old, wearing a suit that cost more than my first house, walking with the sweaty, desperate energy of a man who owes money to people who don't accept checks. Behind him, my daughter Nia, 35, in pearls she'd inherited from her mother, in a black dress like she was already attending my funeral. Behind them, a young lawyer in a cheap gray suit I'd never seen before. Kid named Pierce. Looked 25, looked hungry. "Dad, we need to talk," Julian said. He didn't sit. He planted his hands on the mahogany desk I'd bought the day I made my first million. I set my pen down. I looked at the sweat on his forehead. 40 years of reading rooms, and I could read this one in 3 seconds. This wasn't a conversation. This was a robbery. "I'm busy, Julian," I said. "If you need money for another investment, the answer is no. The last 3 failed. I'm not funding a 4th. Nia threw a thick blue folder across the desk. It slid to a stop inches from my hand. "It's a transfer of leadership agreement," Pierce said, stepping forward. "Due to declining health and cognitive ability, you are voluntarily stepping down as CEO and transferring full controlling interest to your children, effective immediately." I almost laughed. Profits were down 2% because global diesel prices were up 9%. It was a market fluctuation, not dementia. "And if I refuse?" I asked. The door opened again. Julian's wife, Brittany, 30 years old, former swimsuit model, spending habits that would embarrass a Saudi prince. She walked in holding her phone up, camera pointed at my face. "If you refuse, Thad," she said, voice dripping with syrup, "we go live. I've spoken to some of your former secretaries. We have stories, racial slurs, wandering around the office without your pants, the kind old man who was really a monster all along. Lies. Every word of it. I'd been a black man in white-owned logistics for 40 years. I had to be cleaner than clean just to survive." "Those are lies," I said quietly. "Doesn't matter if they're lies," Brittany said, checking her nails. "In the court of public opinion, the accusation is the verdict. Your stock tanks. The board forces you out anyway. Your legacy becomes mud." I looked at them. My son, whose bail I'd posted 3 times. My daughter, whose down payment I paid in cash. My daughter-in-law, whose surgeries I'd unknowingly financed. They weren't asking. They were mugging me. I looked at the silver-framed photo of Viola on the corner of my desk. She'd been gone 5 years. She used to say, "Thad, you give them too much. You're making them soft." She'd been right. Then something surfaced from the back of my mind. Something I had built 5 years ago in a lawyer's office the day I buried her. A shell corporation called Atlas Holdings. A poison pill I never intended to use against my own children, because I never imagined my own children would become my enemies. I took a slow breath, and I smiled. A small, cold smile. "Okay," I said. The room went still. Brittany lowered her phone. "What?" Julian asked, suspicious. I said, "Okay, you're right. I'm tired. I'm old. Maybe it's time to rest." I hit the intercom. "Marcus, get in here." Marcus Sterling has been my personal attorney and my best friend since 1987. Tall man, gray hair, eyes that miss nothing. He walked in, saw my three visitors, saw the folder on the desk, and saw the look in my eye. He knew about Atlas. He knew exactly what that look meant. "Drop the papers, Marcus," I said, leaning back. "Full transfer, the company, the assets, the controlling shares, everything." "Are you sure, Thaddeus?" he asked, emphasizing my full name. Our code for, "Are we really pulling the trigger?" "Unsure. My children want to be kings. Let them be kings." Julian let out a shark's grin. "You're making the right choice, Dad." He clapped me on the shoulder, the hand that was stealing from me. "Signing ceremony tomorrow morning," I said. 9 a.m. downtown courthouse. I want witnesses. I want the press. If I'm going to hand over an empire, I want to do it with dignity. Julian loved that. He could already see the headlines. "New king takes over Coleman Empire." They walked out laughing. They thought they'd won the war. They didn't know they'd just signed their own execution papers. I stood at the window and watched the Atlanta skyline burn orange in the sunset. "Enjoy it while it lasts, kids," I whispered. "Tomorrow you find out the difference between an asset and a liability." To understand the trap, you have to go back 5 years, to the day I buried Viola. The rain came down in sheets that morning at Westview Cemetery. I stood by her open grave under a black umbrella that did nothing to keep the cold out of my bones, and I watched my children. Julian checked his watch every 30 seconds. He wasn't mourning. He was calculating how long he had to pretend before he could get back to his poker game. Nia was whispering to Todd, her husband, complaining that her heels were sinking into the dirt. Brittany was taking a selfie, angling the camera so the hearse was in the background, but her makeup looked tragic enough for social media. Vultures, waiting for the carcass to cool. That was the moment the blindfold fell off my eyes. Viola had been the glue. The soft heart that made excuses for their greed. Without her, I saw them clearly. They didn't see a father standing in the rain. They saw a bank vault with a pulse. That same afternoon, while they were at my house drinking my wine and eating funeral food, I drove to Marcus Sterling's office, dripping mud on his expensive carpet. "Fix it, Marcus." "Fix what, Thad?" "The legacy. If I die tomorrow, they'll tear this company apart like wild dogs. I need a fail-safe. I need a poison pill." That was the birth of what Marcus and I came to call the Scorpion Plan. We spent 6 months restructuring. We created a shell, Atlas Holdings, the parent company that legally owned every truck, every warehouse, every contract on Coleman Logistics books. It sounded strong. Corporate. The kind of entity an arrogant young CEO would want to control. But we also moved something else into Atlas, the debt. 2 years earlier, I'd taken out an $85 million commercial loan to modernize the fleet. Green energy tractors, new distribution centers in Long Beach and Seattle. Good debt. Company revenue serviced it easily, as long as I was at the helm. As long as the banks trusted the captain. Marcus and I buried a clause on page 42012 of the loan agreement. Clause 88B. The Accelerated Payment Protocol. It stated that the loan was secured by the personal guarantee of the founding CEO, Thaddeus Coleman. If Thaddeus Coleman was removed, if he resigned, if controlling interest transferred to any other party, the full principal became due immediately. And the new controlling partners would assume full unlimited personal liability. It was a bomb wired to my heartbeat. As long as I sat in the chair, the company was safe. The moment I stood up, the timer started. For 5 years it sat there, a landmine buried under my own life. Now, driving home from the office the day my children invaded it, I knew it was time to detonate. I pulled through the iron gates of the Coleman estate on Peachtree Battle Avenue, and my headlights caught something that shouldn't have been there. A red convertible. Todd's car. My son-in-law. I'd signed nothing yet. The papers weren't drawn. And they were already at my house. Nia was standing in the doorway when I walked up the stone steps. Todd behind her, leaning against the frame with a smirk. He was a man who had failed at selling used cars, failed at selling insurance, and was now succeeding at nothing except leeching off my daughter's inheritance. "Hi, Dad," Nia said. She didn't move to let me in. She blocked the entrance. "We need to talk," Todd said. He stepped forward, pushing past his own wife. "Julian and we're going to be the new faces of Coleman Logistics. Young, dynamic. We need a venue that reflects that. We're hosting galas. Entertaining investors. The penthouse isn't enough. Our suburban place isn't executive." He gestured at the stone columns of my porch. "This screams power. This is a CEO's residence." I felt a coldness settle in my chest. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my life. They wanted to wear my skin. "You want the house." "We found a solution, Dad," Nia rushed to say. "The guest house. It's single level. No stairs. Right here on the property. Safe for someone your age." The guest house. 2 rooms. Where the groundskeeper used to sleep before I hired a service. Todd smirked. "Plus, Dad, let's be honest. You're being put out to pasture. You should be grateful we're letting you stay on the estate at all. Most kids would ship you off to a home." There it was, the naked arrogance. I could have fought. The deed to the house wasn't in tomorrow's transfer. Not explicitly, but the Scorpion plan needed them to feel invincible. They had to gorge until they choked. If I fought for the house, they'd scrutinize the contracts, and they might find Clause 88B before they stepped on it. I let the anger burn down into something colder, something usable. "Okay," I said. Todd blinked, surprised. He had his insults sharpened for a fight. "Okay, just like that." I walked past them into the foyer. The house smelled like lemon polish and old wood. My home. The home Viola and I had built brick by brick. I'll pack a bag. Upstairs, I opened my old leather suitcase, shirts, comfortable shoes, my razor, and the silver-framed photo of Viola from our 25th anniversary. Her head thrown back, laughing. "Forgive me, Vi. I'm leaving our home. But I promise you, I'll burn it down before I let them keep it." I walked back downstairs. Todd was already pouring himself a drink from my crystal decanter. Nia was running her hands over my velvet curtains, planning her redecoration. I held out the brass key ring. Todd snatched it from my hand. Didn't say thank you. Just jingled the keys and grinned. "You made the right choice, old man. Go get settled in the shack. Julian's coming over. We're gonna have a real party." I stopped at the door and turned back. "Nia." She looked up, holding a Paris vase I bought Viola on our 30th anniversary. "This house is very big," I said, voice low and even. "Many rooms, many shadows. Watch you don't get lost." She frowned. A flicker of something crossed her face. I stepped out and closed the heavy oak door behind me. In the guest house, I sat on the thin mattress and called Marcus. They took the house. "Phase 2 complete," Marcus said. "You okay, Thad?" I looked out the small window at the mansion blazing like a cruise ship in the dark. The bass was already thumping. "Let them have their party, Marcus. Let them drink my wine and sleep in my bed. Tomorrow the bill comes due. And it is going to be expensive." Thursday afternoon, I gave them one last chance to be human. One last off-ramp. I drove to the Rolling Hills Country Club. I'd been a member for 30 years. I sponsored the renovation of the clubhouse. I paid for the charity tournaments. It was the one place I went to eat quietly and read the paper. That day, it wasn't quiet. I heard them before I saw them. Julian and Brittany, holding court at the best table by the window overlooking the 18th green. 12 people around them. Sycophants who wouldn't have given Julian the time of day a week ago, but were now drawn to the smell of fresh money like flies to rotting meat. Julian was smoking a cigar inside the dining room. Strictly forbidden. But Mr. Henderson, the club manager, was standing nearby saying nothing. He knew who was about to sign the checks. Julian spotted me. His eyes lit up with malice. He tapped his glass with a fork, silencing the table. "Well, well, look who it is, everyone. The former king has arrived." He stood and made a mock bow. The table erupted. I kept walking toward my corner table. Julian intercepted me, threw his arm around my shoulder, heavy, condescending, expensive Italian cologne suffocating the air. Dad, what are you doing here? This is a members-only club. Maybe try the diner down the road. Senior discount on burgers. More your speed now. The table roared. I'm still a member, Julian. I pay my dues. For now. When I take over the company accounts on Monday, we're going to review some of these unnecessary expenses. A country club membership for a retired man living in a shack? Wasteful. Brittany stood up. White dress that cost $5,000. She walked over holding a glass of ice water and looked me up and down. Thad, you look tired. You don't fit in here anymore. Look at these people. Vibrant, successful, you're depressing the atmosphere. Then she stumbled. It was fake. A bad acting job. She lurched forward, and the entire glass of ice water splashed across my chest. Oops. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes were dancing. Julian roared with laughter. You're all wet, Dad. Looks like you wet yourself. Maybe we should get you some diapers with that burger. Water dripped down my shirt onto the parquet floor. The whole table was howling. The waiters were looking down, hiding their discomfort. And I stood there, a 71-year-old man being humiliated in a room where I had 30 years of history, and I made the final decision. I picked up a napkin from the nearest table, wiped my face, dried my hands, looked Julian directly in the eye. That was an expensive glass of water, son. He laughed. Water's free, old man. Nothing is free, Julian. Everything has a cost, and you just put it on the company tab. I gestured at the seafood towers and champagne bottles. Enjoy your lunch. Order the lobster. Order the vintage, because this meal is going to be the most expensive one you ever eat. I turned and walked out. In the parking lot, Marcus was waiting in the passenger seat of my car. He had seen everything through the window. He handed me a towel from his gym bag. You okay, Thad? I'm clear, Marcus. He opened his briefcase and pulled out the blue leather folder. 512 pages. The transfer agreement. Clause 88B is on page 427, he said. Buried deep. Julian's kid lawyer won't look. He's too busy counting his commission. I ran my hand over the folder. It felt heavy. Lethal. And Atlas Holdings, set up and waiting. The moment you sign, the moment you resign as CEO, the bank's default trigger fires within the hour. Domino effect. By lunch, they're insolvent. By dinner, they're homeless. Marcus looked at me, his eyes troubled. Are you sure? They're your children, Thad. This will destroy them. They'll have nothing. I looked back at the clubhouse. I could still feel the water on my chest. They already have nothing, Marcus. They have no character. They have no honor. They have no love. All they have is greed. I started the car. I'm not destroying them, Marcus. I'm teaching them, Marcus. I'm teaching them. I'm giving them the one thing I never gave them before. What's that? Consequences. Friday morning, 9 a.m., downtown Fulton County Courthouse, courtroom 4B. The room was packed. Julian had leaked the transfer to every business journal and gossip blog in Atlanta. Cameras, reporters, microphones, the shining, glittering elite of the city's new money crowd, all here to watch the coronation. Julian stood in the center of the room, preening like a peacock. Charcoal suit, hair slicked back, teeth bleached the color of copy paper. Brittany clung to his arm, draped in diamonds, posing for selfies. Mia and Todd sat at the defense table, looking smug, cats who'd just swallowed the canary. They didn't look at me. To them, I was already a ghost. I wore the charcoal wool suit I'd bought for Viola's funeral. It felt appropriate. Today was another kind of burial. Judge Abernethy, a stern woman who had presided over commercial disputes for 20 years, banged her gavel. This is a special session for the notarization of a transfer of ownership. Mr. Coleman, do you understand that by signing this document, you relinquish all rights, titles, and interests in Coleman Logistics and its subsidiaries? I do, Your Honor. Do you understand this action is irrevocable? I do. And do you do this of your own free will without coercion? I looked at Julian tapping his foot. I looked at Brittany checking her makeup and her phone. I looked at Nia whispering to Todd about redecorating the executive suite. Yes, Your Honor, I do this freely. Marcus slid the document across the table. Pierce, Julian's kid lawyer, didn't even open his copy, just tapped it with his pen looking bored. Your Honor, my client has reviewed the documents. We're ready to proceed. Standard transfer. Marcus raised an eyebrow at me. He didn't read it. He didn't even look at the appendix. Arrogance is a powerful drug. It makes you blind. I picked up the gold Mont Blanc pen my employees had given me on my 60th birthday. Heavy, real gold. The room went silent. Cameras zoomed in. Reporters held their breath. I put the nib to the paper. Black ink. Permanent. Thaddeus W. Coleman. Julian snatched the paper before the ink was dry. He held it over his head like a championship belt. It's done. Coleman Logistics is mine. The future starts now. Flashbulbs popped. Brittany squealed and threw her arms around his neck. Todd high-fived Nia. Even Pierce allowed himself a smug little smile. Julian turned to me, flushed with victory. Thanks, old man. Don't worry. We'll take good care of it. You can go feed the pigeons now. The courtroom laughed. I didn't. I turned to Marcus. Now. Marcus stood. Excuse me, Your Honor. Before we adjourn, there is one final procedural matter regarding the immediate execution of the contract. The room quieted. Julian frowned. What now, Sterling? Papers are signed. It's over. Not quite, Marcus said. His voice was calm and terrible. The clause in question is self-executing. It triggers the moment the signature is applied. He opened the blue folder to page 422. Your Honor, I'd like to read Clause 88B of Appendix C into the record, the Accelerated Payment Protocol. Proceed, Mr. Sterling. Marcus adjusted his glasses. He looked directly at Julian. Upon the voluntary transfer of majority control, resignation, or removal of the founding CEO Thaddeus Coleman, any and all commercial loans secured by the personal guarantee of said founders shall be considered in default, and the full principal balance shall become due and payable immediately. Julian's smile flickered. Furthermore, Marcus continued, the new controlling partners identified herein as Julian Coleman and Nia Coleman, acting as primary shareholders of Atlas Holdings, hereby assume full unlimited personal liability for said debt. This includes the forfeiture of all personal assets to satisfy the debt should company liquidity prove insufficient. The silence that followed was absolute. What debt? Julian asked. His voice was tight. Coleman Logistics is profitable. We saw the balance sheets. You saw the operating sheets, Marcus said gently. You did not review the capital expansion ledger for the holding company, the financing for the Pacific Market Distribution Network. How much? Julian whispered. Marcus looked at the document. The current outstanding principal, including early termination fees and immediate interest acceleration, is $85 million. The number hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Brittany's Chanel bag slipped from her fingers. It hit the floor. Clack. That sound was the period at the end of their lives. Julian's face went gray. All the color drained out of him. 85 million, Marcus finished for him. And since the clause is immediate, the bank has already been notified of the transfer. The default is active. The demand for payment has been issued. No, Julian shouted. His voice cracked into a high-pitched panic. No, that's impossible. Dad, tell him he's lying. We don't have $85 million. I stepped out from behind my table. I walked slowly to the center of the room and stopped a few feet from my son. I'm not lying, Julian. I tried to tell you. Running a company isn't just about profits and parties. It's about risk, leverage. But you wouldn't listen. Pierce jumped up, sweating. Your Honor, this is entrapment. My client was not made aware of this liability. Marcus turned on him like a wolf on a rabbit. Mr. Pierce, you were provided with the full documentation 72 hours ago. Did you read Appendix C? Did you advise your client on the liabilities of Atlas Holdings? Or did you just look at the commission check and tell him to sign? Pierce opened his mouth. No sound came out. He had committed malpractice on live camera. His career was over before it started. Nia let out a low moan. Todd, unlimited personal liability. What does that mean? Todd looked like he was about to vomit. It means they can take everything. Our house, the cars, the savings, my trust fund, Brittany screamed. You said my money was safe. Marcus turned to her coldly. Actually, Mrs. Coleman, since you co-signed the spousal guarantee on the director's indemnification form this morning, another document you signed without reading, your assets are also fair game. Julian turned to me. The hatred in his eyes was gone, replaced by pure animal fear. Dad, you have to stop this. You have the money. You can guarantee it again. Please. We'll be ruined. We'll be on the street. I looked at the son who had laughed while ice water dripped from my chest, who had called me old man, who had tried to throw me out of my own home. I smiled the smile of a man putting down a heavy load. I can't help you, Julian. I'm retired. Remember? You wanted me out. You wanted the control. I pointed to the papers still wet with black ink. You have the control now, son. You are the CEO. You are the king. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Right onto you. A sound rippled through the courtroom. Not a voice. A vibration. Phones. Julian's. Brittany's. Nia's. Todd's. Every single one buzzing at once. Julian grabbed his phone. His hand shook so hard he almost dropped it. Alert, account frozen. Alert, credit limit revoked. Alert, asset seizure pending. Brittany checked hers and let out a wail. My cards, all declined. Amex just canceled. Nia sobbed into Todd's shoulder. Todd stared at the wall, catatonic. I turned to the judge. Thank you, Your Honor. I believe my business here is done. I walked toward the exit. Reporters shouted questions. Flashbulbs popped, but this time they weren't capturing a coronation. They were capturing a massacre. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I walked out of the courtroom, out of the noise, out of the life I had built for them, into the quiet marble hallway where the only sound was the tap of my own shoes. I was retired. I was broke on paper. I was homeless. But for the first time in 40 years, I was free. 3 days later, I was on the balcony of my new apartment, a modest 2-bedroom on the 12th floor of a downtown high-rise. I bought it 5 years ago through a private pension fund Marcus had set up under a separate LLC. Airtight. Invisible to creditors. Invisible to my children. I was drinking Earl Grey tea and watching the sun set behind the Coleman Tower when I heard the pounding on my door. Not a knock, a hammering, like someone running from a fire. The camera feed showed Julian and Nia in the hallway. Julian in the same suit he'd worn to court, now wrinkled, stained, tie gone, sunken eyes, unshaven. A man who hadn't slept in 72 hours. Nia in a tracksuit, hair matted, face blotchy from crying. I opened the door 3 inches. The chain held. Dad. Julian pushed his face into the crack. Please, they're taking everything. The bank sent the eviction notice this morning. 12 hours to vacate the penthouse, the mansion. Sheriffs are coming tomorrow. Padlocking the gates. I need cash, he begged. 50,000, 10,000, anything. I need to pay a lawyer. I took a sip of tea. The steam curled up between us. I can't help you. You're our father. Julian slammed the door. The chain rattled. Held. I warned you, Julian. I told you heavy is the head that wears the crown. But 85 million, Nia cried. Nobody can pay that. I paid it for 5 years, every month, on time, because I worked. You wanted the power, Nia. You and Todd wanted the big house. You kicked me out. You sent me to the guest house. You said I was in the way. Nia flinched. I'm sorry, Dad. Let us in. We'll sleep on the floor. No. Julian threw his shoulder against the door. Open it or I'll kill you, old man. I didn't flinch. I reached behind the door and pressed the red button. Direct line to building security. Earl. 2 intruders on the 12th floor. Making threats. Please remove them. On our way, Mr. Coleman, Nia gasped. Dad, we're your children. Not anymore. My children died a long time ago. They were replaced by vultures, and I don't let vultures in my house. 2 guards, former military, arrived in under 90 seconds. They dragged Julian toward the elevator, kicking and cursing my name. Nia sobbed a broken heap of entitlement. The elevator doors closed. Silence. I closed my door, locked the deadbolt, put the chain back, walked out onto the balcony and poured a bourbon instead of the tea. The city glittered below. Somewhere down there in the dark streets, my children were homeless, penniless, alone. It burned going down. Good, clean burn. They were learning. Harsh lesson. But the only one that would stick. 3 months passed. I heard rumors. Julian was washing dishes at a diner off Memorial Drive. Nia was working the night shift as a janitor, scrubbing marble floors she used to walk on in Italian heels. Brittany had taken a plane ticket and $50,000 I'd offered her, and vanished to Seattle, dragging my 3-year-old grandson Leo out of the wreckage. She filed divorce papers the next morning. She never called Julian again. Todd went to federal prison. He'd tried to steal a shipment of electronics from the West Side Depot in the middle of the night, $4 million in Samsung televisions. My old head of security, Big Mike, tipped the police. I watched from a parked car across the street as the marshals cuffed my son-in-law and my daughter. Todd caught 10 years. Nia cooperated, testified, and got probation. I let gravity do its work. Then one Tuesday evening in November, rain on the glass. I was standing at my stove making Viola's okra gumbo, the recipe I hadn't touched in 5 years. The smell of roof and thyme filled the small apartment with a woman who wasn't there, and I heard the knock. Not pounding, not hammering. A soft, hesitant tap, like a bird against the glass. The camera showed them. Julian and Nia, soaked. Cheap plastic ponchos torn at the hem. Julian's hands tucked under his armpits. Nia leaning against the doorframe like her legs wouldn't hold her. They didn't look like Holmans anymore. They looked like ghosts of the people I used to know. I opened the door. Julian's face was gaunt. Cheekbones sharp. His hands, the hands that used to shuffle poker chips, were red and chapped, covered in small cuts from steel wool. Mia's eyes were sunken, dark bruises beneath them. She wore a uniform from a cleaning service. "Hello, Dad," Julian whispered. Voice cracked like dry leaves. I didn't move from the doorway. "What do you want?" I expected a plea. I expected a scheme. Julian just looked at his feet. "We're hungry." Simple, primal, true. "We haven't eaten since yesterday, Dad," Nia said softly. "The rent at the boarding house took everything." I looked at them. The children I had raised to be kings and queens, now standing as beggars on my doormat, and for the first time in months, I didn't see the enemies who tried to destroy me. I saw the humans I had failed to teach. "Come in. Take off your shoes. Leave the ponchos in the hall." They stripped off the wet layers with trembling hands. The smell of gumbo hit them, and I saw Julian's nose twitch. I saw Nia's stomach clench. "Sit down." I ladled the thick, dark stew over mounds of white rice. Cut 3 pieces of cornbread slathered in butter. Set the bowls in front of them. Eat. They didn't wait for a toast. They didn't wait for a toast. They didn't wait for a napkin. They ate with a ferocity that broke my heart. Like wolves. Like they were afraid the food would vanish. When they finished, Nia sat back with her eyes closed. "It's Mom's recipe." "You said this was peasant food, Nia. You said you wanted sushi." "I was stupid, Dad. I was so stupid." Julian looked at his scarred hands. "You were right, Dad, about everything. I made $12 an hour. I stand for 10 hours. And at the end of the day, I have enough for a sandwich and a bus ride." He looked up. His eyes were clear for the first time in his life. "I'm sorry. Not because I lost the money. Because I wasted your life. Everything you built." I took the bowls to the sink, washed them. The sound of the water was the only sound in the room. "So what now?" Julian glanced at Nia. We go back. I have a shift tomorrow morning. Nia has to clean the lobby on 5th Street. We just wanted to see you. We're being moved to a shelter next week. The boarding house is kicking us out. I leaned against the counter. I am not giving you money. I know, Julian said quickly. That door is closed. We didn't come for money. I looked at them a long time, weighed them. I bought the old warehouse back last month, the one on Fulton Industrial, where I started. Julian's head came up. He remembered that warehouse. He used to play hide and seek in it when he was 5. I need a night crew. Loading trucks. Sorting packages. It's cold in winter, hot in summer. 50 pounds minimum per box, $15 an hour. No benefits, no company car, no title. Clock in, work, clock out. If you steal, you go to jail. If you're late, you're fired. I looked at Julian. I need a loader. I looked at Nia. I need an inventory clerk. You're not the CEO, I told my son. You're a pair of hands. The other workers will know who you are. They'll know you're the idiot who lost the empire. They'll laugh at you. Let them laugh, Julian said. His jaw set. I deserve it. And you, I turned to Nia. You're not the princess. You're the help. I'm already the help, Dad. I scrub toilets for strangers. Working the name, it would be an honor. I reached into my pocket, pulled out 2 things. 2 bus passes. Not cash. Bus passes. 6 p.m. tomorrow. Westgate. Ask for Mike. Don't tell him I sent you. Tell him you're the new hires. If he thinks you're soft, he kicks you out. They took the passes like winning lottery tickets. Julian paused at the door. The soup was good, Dad. It tastes better when you earn it. I watched them walk down the street. 2 small figures huddled against the storm. They had nothing. They were starting from zero, but they were walking, moving forward under their own power. 1 year later, I parked my sedan in the shadow of the water tower overlooking the West Side Depot at 6 in the morning. I wasn't there as the honorary founder. I wasn't there as Thad Coleman. I was just a ghost haunting the edges of the world I used to own. I raised my binoculars. Julian was on Bay 4. He looked different. The soft, doughy look of a man who lived in air conditioning was gone. He was lean now. Wiry. Muscles ropey under a faded blue work shirt, his face dark from the sun. His hands, the hands that had once held a royal flush and lost $5 million, were covered in calluses. Scarred. Ugly. The most beautiful hands I had ever seen. Big Mike pointed at a pallet of hydraulic pumps, 300 pounds each. Julian didn't complain, didn't roll his eyes. He squatted down, keeping his back straight the way I taught him 40 years ago, and he lifted. Lift, turn, stack. Lift, turn, stack. Nia was on clipboard duty at the dispatch office. She was arguing with a truck driver, big man trying to cut the line. No ticket, no load. Back of the line, Miller. I don't care if you're in a rush. Rules are rules. The driver grumbled and moved. Nia didn't gloat. Marked her board. Moved to the next. I watched them for an hour. Then the whistle blew for lunch. The crew moved to the break area under the corrugated tin roof. Julian and Nia sat together. Brown paper bags. Julian pulled out a bologna sandwich. Nia had an apple and a thermos. Then a kid, 19, maybe 20, new hire, sat down a few feet away with nothing. No bag. No food. Staring at his boots, pretending he wasn't hungry. A year ago, Julian would have laughed. A year ago, Julian would have eaten a steak in front of a starving man and felt nothing. But this wasn't that Julian. I watched my son tear his sandwich in half. It wasn't a big sandwich. Half meant he'd be hungry the rest of the shift. He didn't hesitate. He leaned over and tapped the kid on the knee. Here, take it. Can't lift crates on an empty tank. The kid took it. Nodded a silent thank you. Nia watched. She didn't scold him for giving away their food. She took her apple, cut it in half with a pocket knife, gave half to Julian. I sat in my car and felt a hot tear roll down my cheek. I had waited 72 years to see that. I had waited a lifetime to see my son give something away without expecting a receipt. I drove to Marcus Sterling's office. He had the coffee ready. He saw my face. You saw them? They're ready, Marcus. He opened his drawer. He pulled out a fresh legal pad. So we reinstate the inheritance? Give the money back? No. He looked up. But, Thad, you just said they're ready. Why not the reward? Because money isn't a reward, Marcus. Money is a tool. You don't give a power tool to a toddler just because he learned to walk. And you don't give a recovering addict the keys to the distillery just because he's been sober a year. I tapped the desk. Spendthrift Trust, 10 years. They have to work. Continuous employment. No gaps longer than a month unless medical. No gambling. No drugs. No debt. And if they hold the line, they get a stipend, not a lump sum. A monthly payout equal to exactly what they earn from their job. If Julian earns $2,000, the trust matches it. If he earns $5,000, the trust matches $5,000. Incentive matching. Marcus smiled. They'll never be billionaires. They'll never fly private again. But they'll be comfortable, safe, productive. The principal stays in the Viola Coleman Foundation. Widows, orphans, victims of financial fraud. My children don't need millions. They need purpose. I signed the document. Thaddeus W. Coleman, black ink, permanent. No hidden clauses this time. No poison pills. Just a simple promise. If you walk the line will hold you up. Marcus shook my hand. Most fathers would have caved. Most fathers would have seen them sweeping floors and written a check. Most fathers want their children to be happy, Marcus. I wanted mine to be good. There's a difference. Happiness is cheap. Goodness costs everything. The rain has stopped. I'm sitting in my armchair with the lights off. The only illumination is the city below and a small candle next to the silver-framed photograph on the side table. Viola is smiling at me, frozen in a moment from a time before the money rotted us from the inside out. I sip my bourbon, the cheap stuff, the kind I used to drink when I was hauling freight across the Midwest. It tastes like gasoline and oak. It tastes like the truth. I spent my life thinking the empire was my legacy. The trucks, the warehouses, the market share. I thought if I piled up enough gold, my children could stand on top of it and touch the stars. I was wrong. I didn't build a platform for them. I dug a hole, filled it with money, and threw them inside. I took away their hunger. I took away their need to strive. I turned them into invalids of the soul who couldn't walk without a crutch made of cash. Somewhere out there tonight, Julian is sleeping on a thin mattress in a boarding house. His back hurts. His hands are raw. But he is sleeping the sleep of an honest man. Somewhere, Nia is worrying about inventory counts. She has found out there is pride in accuracy. Pride in being useful. I destroyed their lives to save their souls. Some inheritances are blessings. Others are curses disguised in gold. The Spendthrift Trust sits in Marcus's safe. 10 years from now, if they hold the line, they'll have earned something better than money. They'll have earned themselves back. I blow out the candle. The smoke drifts up, a thin gray ribbon of prayer. Good night, Julian. Good night, Nia. Work hard. Keep your heads down. Keep your hands busy. And remember, the name on your shirt isn't a brand, it's a promise. Don't break it. I am Thaddeus Washington Coleman. I started with nothing. I built everything. I lost it all. And then I built the only thing that really mattered. I built a family. It took me 71 years and a catastrophe to do it, but I did it.